Hi, I'm Adri, and I'm going to tell you the story of how a hike inspired a classic cult comedy movie.
Hi, I'm Darren, and I have a story about some real-life adventures that took place in a cave that was made most famous in a work of fiction.
Hi, I'm Melissa, and I have a story about cave art that's truly barbaric.
How are all these stories going to tell you about caves? Find out in this episode of History Bluffs. Welcome to another episode of History Bluffs. It's where truth is stranger than fiction. And now I want to welcome to the screen, to the show, it's your host, it's Chris!
Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of History Bluffs. I believe this is episode 93, is that correct, Adam?
Yeah, that is correct.
That is correct. Yeah,
this is the 93rd lesson.
I counted them in my head, and we also have it listed on the YouTube page.
Yeah.
But welcome to our 93rd lesson. As Adam mentioned, we have three fantastic historians that are going to regale us tonight with stories inspired by the word that Adam mentioned, cave. And we are going to hear from them in three different rounds. They're going to tell us stories. And let's welcome our contestants. Before I get to the rules too deeply, let's welcome our historians, our armchair historians, to the show. Hello, everyone. Adrian, I'm going to start with you. Hi, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So my cave, my favorite personal cave story is the Smooth Cave.
I thought you were going to have a personal...
SMOO.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I thought you were going to say you have a favorite cave. Like, this is where I go to read. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, and I bring
Chris.
one of those little headset flashlights so I could read in a cave.
Yeah, that's like you do.
No, the Smooth Cave it's right outside Durness, Scotland, and I discovered it kind of by accident. I was on a golf trip, and Durness is the northernmost golf course on the mainland of Scotland, and it's phenomenal. And I took some amazing pictures. In fact, actually, my company used some of those pictures in later years in one of our annual reports. So, Adrian, do you have a cave experience like that, or a cave experience? Period.
No
Okay.
cave at all.
All right.
The closest thing I think I would say I got to was in Puerto Rico in the Yunque forest. I did like rappelling down the side of a mountain. So if that mountain were enclosed, then it would be a cave.
Nice.
Yeah.
Some people tell me I'm rappelling very often without caves this present. But Darren is our next historian. Hello, Darren. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hello, Chris.
Do you, sir? You travel more than me, actually. Do you have a cave story? I'm sure you do. Let's hear it.
I do, actually, and it's one that I recommend to everybody in the virtual room or whoever listens to this. In New Zealand, near Waitomo, there are these caves, and they're the only place in the world where these glowworms live. And you can either rappel into the caves, or you can do what we did, which is called blackwater rafting, where you put on a wetsuit and a hard hat and with a little light on it, and you grab an inner tube and you crawl on your hands and knees through a stream until you get to a waterfall that you jump off of backwards in the dark. And then you go downstream for like 30 minutes or so, and everyone turns off their lights, and you're just surrounded by glowworms. It's like looking at the Milky Way.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's one of the most incredible things I've ever done in my life.
That's cool.
That's very cool. All right. And our third, thank you for sharing that, Darren. Our third historian of the evening is Melissa. Hello, Melissa. Welcome back.
Hello.
So we've heard of caves in Scotland, in Puerto Rico, in New Zealand, was it, Darren?
Yes.
Yes, New Zealand. Do you have a cave story or awareness, anything here, maybe in the States or wherever? And it doesn't have to be a physical cave. It could be like, hopes and dreams that caved in.
Oh, wow. I have an awareness of caves. So to answer your question, yes.
All right.
I have a bat story, though. So
Ooh.
in college, I took this class where I basically went out and like put these nets out, these mist nets, and we got to put taggers on bats that they were tracking, which was kind of cool.
Very cool indeed. Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome, Adrian. Welcome, Darren. Welcome, Melissa. We are up. There it is. I mean, there it is. All right. Bat story.
Yeah.
We have a bat story for you.
I don't usually get to use the Batman mask, but here we are.
All right. Well done, Adam. We'll let Batman lead us into the rule card. If you don't mind, would you put up the rule card, Adam, please?
Oh, let's do it. All right. This is a game show, people, and we have rules. Here's the rules card. It's there for people who can see. If you're listening on our audio podcast, Chris will tell you the rules.
The historians are inspired by the topic. Tonight's topic, of course, is the word cave. And we have two historians that are telling true stories and one historian who is bluffing. And the true stories are factual stories. The bluff story is fictional in premise. They might have some real locations and or people in their bluff story, but the premise of their story is fictional. And the audience, we ask, please do not help in the way of looking up anything online, using any kind of search engine. Yeah, I know. We will have an opportunity for the audience and myself to try to guess which of our three historians is the bluff, but we ask you not to put up anything in comments or anything to debunk anyone's story if you know that they are indeed telling a false story early on. Save that for the third round because at the end of 3 rounds, we're going to have the opportunity, as I mentioned, for all of us to try to figure out who is the bluff. And only Adam, our fabulous tech, knows, and the bluff themselves. I don't know, and our historians don't know unless they are indeed the bluff themselves. So,
speaking of the rounds,
yes.
It's time to bring out our super technology, the Round Tracker 5500.
There it is. The Round Tracker 5500, as you can see for those watching, it is above my head with 3 rounds with 3 dots delineated in each round. And as each historian goes, those circles will be filled for the round. And once we get to all 3 filled in a round, we know it's time to move on to the next round. We have 3 rounds, and the way the rounds work, each historian is allotted a specific amount of time per round to tell their story. The first round is 75 seconds. The second round, we crunch down some time down to 60 seconds. And the third round is even smaller. It's 45 seconds for them to complete their story. Yes, indeed.
Wow, that's not a lot of time.
That's not a lot of time. So with that, let's not waste any more time and let's get right to the stories. Shall we see round number 1, please, Adam?
All right, Chris, you asked for it. Here it comes. Let's go to round number 1.
So we're going to go to round 1, and we're going to go in the order that we brought you into the show. So, Adri, we're going to have you go first. You have 75 seconds on the clock, and the floor is yours.
Okay. So, on September 19th, 1991, Helmut and Erica Simon, 2 German hikers, were hiking the Alps on the Austrian-Italian border. On their way down from the peak of the mountain, they took a shortcut down and came across the body of a man who was sticking out of like the ice of the glacier. Basically, his top half was sticking out. He was face down. He was like on his arms like that, and his skin was visible. Helmut and Erica assumed it was a fellow mountaineer who had passed away up on the mountain and continued on their hike. When they got down to the bottom, they let the rangers know, and the rangers came back up like 2 days later, and they basically removed the man from the ice. 2 days later, he was extracted. 2 days after that, he was transported along with the belongings that they collected to the medical examiner's office in Innsbruck. They quickly realized that this person was not a recently deceased mountaineer, but because of the context of his clothing and what he had with him, they realized that he was a man who dated back to 5,300 years ago in the Neolithic era. He's the oldest person they've ever found in Europe.
Wow. That's very fascinating. Let's hear about Adri's opening round. Darren, what did you think of Adri's opening round story?
I think it makes sense if it was on the Italian side that a couple hikers came down and said, "Hey, look, we found a dead guy," and it took them 2 days to do anything.
Good point. Good point. Melissa, what do you think about Adri's opening round?
Wow, that's a lot of action to happen in the first round. And I feel like, kind of like the body they discovered, it's leaving you a little exposed. So I'm just saying, a lot happening.
A lot happening indeed. All right. Well, let's hear from our next historian. We're going to go to historian Darren. We're going to have you come out to the center of the screen, and you're going to hear the boom from the chime, and you're going to have 35 seconds to begin your round. The floor is yours.
Okay. So we all know about the adventures of Tom Sawyer and how Tom Sawyer hid out with Injun Joe in McDougal's Cave. But did you know that McDougal's Cave is based on a real cave in Hannibal, Missouri, owned by a surgeon named Joseph Nash McDowell? The earliest documentation is that Jack Sims was out hunting one cold day in 1819 when he spotted what he believed to be panther tracks. He followed the tracks into some bushes by the hill and was surprised to find they led to an opening. He explored the first few miles of the cave with torches, but he never found the panther. And after that, the cave was known as Sims Cave or sometimes Panther Cave. Then in 1848, McDowell purchased the cave for reasons we'll get into later. And it was around this time, when Samuel Clemens was a young boy, that he would often play in McDowell's Cave. It was an experience that etched in his mind and inspired much of what he wrote about in Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn, and all those books that we're familiar with. We know it was McDowell's Cave in particular that inspired him because in a brazen act of graffiti that even Tom Sawyer would be proud of, Clemens painted his name on the wall. And if you visit McDowell Cave, you can see it yourself 170 years later.
Wow. Mark Twain, the Vandal. Did not know that part of his background. Melissa, let's start with you. What did you think of Darren's opening round?
Yeah, so I didn't know that you could just straight up purchase a cave. Like, that's a new life goal for me. That's like amazing.
It was the
I want
1800s.
I want 3.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, purchasing the cave on your bucket list. We mark it down. And Adri, what do you think of Darren's opening story?
So I heard one significant red flag. He said that you can still go and see the paint right now, 100 and something years later, right? I just bought this house a year ago, and the paint is already peeling off outside. So I would say that it's not a McDowell, it's a McLion.
Wow. Strong words for round one. Okay.
Throwing
Keep that in mind. Everyone hold those thoughts in the back of your head. And we're going to go to Melissa to bring her up. And Melissa's going to finish off our first round of opening stories. As you can see in a round track of 5,500, we only have 2 of the 3 dots filled in. So, Melissa, you have 75 seconds to tell us your opening round of your story.
So, in the course of history, there are certain tropes or themes that happen again and again. Love, war, peace, and of course, friendly competition. And prehistoric humans were no different. So this brings us to the well-known cave paintings in Lascaux Grotto. This is in France, and historians kind of date these caves to around 10,000 to 15,000 BC. So these walls in the caves, they show mostly animals, native animals like basically bulls, horses, there are rhinos. And in fact, one of the most famous sections of the cave is called the Hall of Bulls. And it shows these giant bulls kind of like working with the lines of the cave and these hunters that are hunting the bulls. And strikingly, there's one that has a spear that is kind of chasing the bulls through the cave. And one thing that's important, though, is the artists actually left a signature, and they left their signature by placing their hand against the wall of the cave and kind of letting paint kind of swirl around their hand, which causes kind of a distinctive handprint. And to learn more, you'll have to wait for part 2.
All right, Adri, are you buying Melissa's story about the Hall of Bulls, or do you think it's a Hall of Bull?
I'm not quite sure yet. The only thing that I really thought of for some reason was when she said that the handprints are like that. I thought of the scene in Titanic when they're in the car and one of them slaps their hand on the side of the car. Was that a handprint? I don't know.
We know what was going on in that car. Sounds like the cave. This cave's a rockin'. Don't come a knockin'. I'm sorry.
That's all right, Adam. You are
That's
perfectly
an
fine
earthquake.
doing that.
When the cave is rocking, that's an earthquake.
That's true. That's an earthquake. Do not approach the cave.
That's right. Darren, what'd you think of Melissa's opening round?
It was a very detailed description of the artwork, and I was just surprised with all this art and it being in France that the cavemen, she didn't describe them wearing little berets or smoking cigarettes or drinking little coffees. So that was a red flag for me.
Okay, duly noted. Yeah, possibly inaccurate cave paintings. All right. So we have heard now from all three of our historians. We've heard each of their takes on the other stories. That means, Adam, the only one thing, it's time to move on to round number 2.
Let's do it.
All right.
Here we are. Round 2.
Round 2. I feel so much more knowledgeable than I did at the beginning of round 1.
Me too.
And we have a brand new sector of the round tracker 5500. Nice clean sheet there. All three are open. So we're going to go back to Adri, and she is going to continue her story. However, now we're in round number 2. So that means that the time has been edited down. We only have 60 seconds. Each person has 60 seconds to tell their side of the story in this round. So Adri, you're going to come into the center square. The sundial is going to come up. You can hear the boom, and the floor is yours.
So the Neanderthal that they found, they named him Otzi the Iceman. He was perfectly preserved and mummified in the icy snow for 5,000 years, making him older than the pyramids. And when he was living, woolly mammoths still roamed the earth at that time. So how did he end up there? The original investigation yielded that his cause of death was hypothermia. But that was challenged about 10 years after his discovery when they gave him a CT scan and they found the head of a bow and arrow lodged into his left shoulder. They assumed that the arrow hit a major artery and that caused him to die. This ignited further review of his body and the belongings, and a deep defensive wound was found on his right hand. The cut at the time of his death had already begun to heal. So what they put together was that he was actually fleeing as fast as he could away from whoever was attacking him, and he didn't get away in time, and that's what killed him, the person who was chasing him.
Okay. Deep defensive wound. Let's see. Darren, I'll come back to you and say, what do you think of Otzi the Iceman? Are you believing this?
Well, what does track is that an apparent homeless man got a CT scan for free because it took place in Europe.
Okay.
Correct.
Let's hear it for socialized medicine.
Socialized medicine works for everybody.
It does indeed, even back then. All right, Melissa, what do you think of Adri's second round?
Yeah, these are some pretty chilling details here about Nazi. Really, really detailed. It makes me wonder if this is part of a Forensic Files episode as well. I'm just saying.
Could be.
All right. Could be indeed.
Unsolved mysteries.
Well, let us solve another mystery, and that would be, what is Darren going to say in round number 2? So, Darren, you're going to come up, and you have 60 seconds in this round to tell us where we left off. You were telling us about Samuel Clemens' burgeoning career as a graffiti artist. So let's hear more.
That's right.
Here we go.
So probably the weirdest things that were going on in McDowell Cave were the doings of Joseph Nash McDowell himself. As I mentioned, he was a surgeon, and he bought the cave because the cool, temperate climate was ideal for the gruesome work of experimenting on dead bodies. McDowell was obsessed with the idea of petrifying dead bodies, and he even experimented on petrifying his recently deceased daughter, at least until the local townspeople found out, became outraged, and then demanded that she receive a proper burial. But then when Huckleberry Finn was published in 1886, the cave became a big tourist attraction, and some local businessmen bought the site. They built a dance hall, a horse track, a baseball diamond, and even an ice house for this brand new thing called a soda stand. And by 1890, it was so popular that they blasted the entrance open with dynamite to allow for more traffic. But I have even a more notorious resident of the cave that I'll talk about in the next segment.
Okay, all right. Well, Melissa, what did you think of the dynamite blast of 1886 happening with the McDowell Cave?
Yeah, that's an explosive second part of that story. That's for sure.
There
I
it is.
deserve that.
Really?
I deserve that. Yeah, no, you keep saying that things only make sense in Europe, but this makes sense in America. Exploiting the natural wonder for tourism makes sense.
Oh, yeah,
And it did happen in Missouri. They're known for that as other places are. Adri, what do you think of Darren's story, round 2?
Well, it sounded like he took the best of like a lot of cinematic moments. For example, Back to the Future, coming out of the cave, Hostel and Dexter doing experimental surgeries on people. Sometimes it's your sister, sometimes it's not.
Oh.
So those are some red flags that I saw. Yeah, I still think he's McLying to us.
Okay, all right.
McBluffing.
She is sticking with the McLion. All right. Well,
sticking with it.
We have 2 of our 3 dots filled in the round track of 5,500 for round number 2. That means that we need to bring Melissa back to the center square. And Melissa, you are going to have 60 seconds to tell us your next round of your story. We were last hearing about the bulls and the horses and the rhinos. So please continue.
All right, so we are going to call the painter of the Hall of Bulls. We're going to call this person Bull Painter because we can tell, again, by their distinctive handprint, that's their signature. Well, if you go a little bit further and deeper into the cave, you can see that there is another kind of group of paintings. They're not as famous as the Hall of Bulls. Like the Bull Painter is kind of like Michelangelo of cave painting, whereas this other guy, let's call this person Horse Painter. And here shows kind of more domestic scenes. You have figures that are on horses. Notably, you have one figure that has a bow and arrow that is on top of a really big horse. And you have a spearman who is on a slightly smaller horse nearby. So you keep going into the cave and you continue to see these different paintings, and that brings us to what's known as the Passage of the Cave, and that's the real name. So you'll have to find out what happens next in part 3.
All right. The Passage of the Cave. Adri, is it passing muster with you?
It is, yeah. I don't have anything really to question. I know that I took art history class about 25 years ago, and from what I can remember, everything sounds right.
All right, I love it. Darren, what did you think of Melissa's second round story there?
I'm waiting for part 3 to find out that these are all the ancestors of Banksy.
Right, and I will say this, that they are very European sounding. Horse painter, bull painter. They're very straight to the point with their names when they do that kind of stuff over there with their signage. So we have temporarily lost the round track of 500. There it is again.
There it is.
All 3 dots of the round number 2 are filled. Yes, celebrate. And Adam, that means that we're moving forward to round number 3.
Oh my God, let's go to the final round. Oh, we are in it.
We are
my friend
in it.
Chris.
We are in it indeed. It feels like only about 7-10 seconds ago we were in round 2. Man, where does time go? All right. Well, we are now in the final of our 3 rounds, and that means that the time is reduced once again down to 45 seconds this round. So each of our historians will now conclude their stories, give us their big ta-da moment in the next 45 seconds of their respective rounds. And we're going to bring Adri back out to begin round 3. Adri, you have 45 seconds. The clock is ticking. The time is running. The stage is yours.
So the medical examiners basically used the shoes that he had, that everything had been preserved perfectly. They tested the grass and the pollen and everything that was in there, and they were able to see that he really was going up and down in elevation Don't ask me how they know that. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a historian. But yeah, they could tell that he was being chased. And when the arrow hit him, he basically fell, died, and was mummified there for thousands of years. Now, this story came about in 1991 when the two hikers found him. This was huge worldwide news because it was the oldest person they'd ever found. And it was the inspiration behind the 1994 cult classic comedy Encino Man, starring our favorite comedians, Brendan Fraser and Pauly Shore, which is about a caveman that they find when they're digging a pool, and he comes back to life, and it's an awesome movie. If you haven't seen it, watch it.
All right. How could we have a topic of cave and not have someone bring up Encino Man? Thank you, Adrian, for filling that obligation for the show. So, Darren, what did you think of the end of Adrian's story there? How did she wrap everything up?
Well, I think the Encino Man reference definitely tied it all together. Otherwise, I don't know if the story would be complete enough for me, but yes.
All right, good to know. And Melissa, what do you think of Adrian's story? We will have an opportunity, by the way, for one more round of comments and kind of conjecture back and forth. But what did you think of Adrian's story initially?
Yeah, it wrapped up kind of like nice and neatly. But I will say it was almost a little too neat. So I'm wondering, Brendan Fraser was also in The Whale, and I'm wondering if this is a whale story as well.
Big fish story. Okay. All right. Well, the only way we're going to know is if we find out. But first, we have to hear from the other two historians to conclude their stories. So, Darren, we're going to bring you out. You're going to have 45 seconds to tell your concluding round number 3 version of your story. And last we left off, we had the dynamite blast. So blow us away with round 3.
Okay, so in 1879, a little bit before it became a tourist attraction, a group of armed men stormed into a bank in Saverton, Missouri. The amount of money they stole, that's been lost to history, but not the identity of the bank robbers. It was the infamous Jesse James gang. And then after the robbery, they fled on horseback and hid out in McDowell Cave. And like Samuel Clemens, Jesse James himself signed his name on the cave, and you can go see it today. But perhaps the strangest coincidence of all in this story is that the very first armed robbery attributed to Jesse James occurred in Gallatin, Missouri. And after approaching the cashier to change a $100 bill, Jesse James opened fire on the cashier. And when that happened, the only other person who was in the building immediately ran out the door, and James turned and shot him in the arm, and he got away and survived. That man was James McDowell. No relation.
Wow. All right. Well, Melissa, turn of events there at the end. What do you think of Darren's story?
Yeah, there was a lot of things that happened and a lot of people too. And McDowell, I'm wondering, like, does Andie MacDowell enter into the scene at some point from the actress? So there's a lot going on here. And I think for that reason, it's, I don't know, starting to cave in just a little bit.
Starting to cave in. All right. Adri, what did you think of Darren's conclusion?
Well, not only the McDowell reference that Melissa just made, but also the Jesse James reference. Are we talking about Sandra Bullock's ex-husband? He was a real scumbag. This guy sounds like a real scumbag. It sounds like you've created quite the story here.
Jesse James was a bad person. That is true.
Yes, he was. I'm not ready to make an accusation.
Okay.
But
you're
I'm pretty close. I'm leaning.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have heard from 2 or 3 historians in round 3. They've wrapped up their stories. That means we only have one more to do the same. And Melissa, you're going to come out and wrap up your story in 45 seconds. So the floor is yours. Let's hear about the passage of the cave.
All right. So this special place inside the cave called the Passage, a lot of it has actually been kind of like, I guess, degraded due to air circulation. But there are some interesting things that are now coming to light thanks to new technology and carbon dating and things like that. And we can go in and we can see that these 2 painters, remember, we had 2 painters, the bull painter and we had the horse painter. They were at work in this part of the cave as well. And interestingly enough, there is another hunting scene with the spearman kind of getting ready to kill a rhino. But if you look closely, there's an arrow going through that figure, and the bowman is standing right beside him. And there's another handprint with part of the pinky missing, which is how we know it is the horse painter's painting.
Missing pinky. All right, that sounds well. Let's hear from, before I say anything, let's hear from our other historians. Adri, what did you think of Melissa's final round there?
So I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. The horse painter painted the bull on the other side of the passage?
Bull painter painted the bull. Horse painter painted the horses.
Riveting. That is riveting.
I'm not following. I need some more clarification.
Again, they were very direct. So.
Wow.
All right.
I have no further comments.
No further comments or questions at this time.
Right.
All right, Your Honor, we're going to move on. Darren, what did you think of Melissa's conclusion there?
I'll go back to my first comment. There's a distinct lack of baguettes or red wine or snails or anything like that. I'm having a hard time believe this is French.
Okay. Well,
Nothing French about these caves.
Nothing French about this at all. Let's see. Adam, if you would be so kind, let's put up the round tracker 5500 just to make sure that my math is correct. And indeed it is. We have heard from all three of our armchair historians in all three rounds. That means only one thing. We have to find out who is the bluff for this week. Two historians are telling the true stories, and one of them is bluffing. So, I'm going to now come back to our historians and get some more comments and accusations. Adri, I'll start with you. So we have Darren's story about Sam Clemens and his graffiti career taken over by Jesse James, and then James McDowell being shot by Jesse James in one big full circle. What do you think of that story?
Well, I thought it was pure baloney. About 90% of this entire show, I was ready to accuse Darren of being the bluff. But due to the scale of the revelation in the third round by Melissa, I am now ready to accuse Melissa of being the bluff.
All right. We have an accusation of Melissa as the bluff. All right. Darren, what about you? So we have Adri with the helmet and Erica Simon finding the Encino Man in the Alps, and we have Melissa with the horse and bull painting.
I've been going back and forth. I'm familiar with prehistoric people being found and preserved in glacier kind of situations, and there may be multiple of these, and something in my mind says this did also happen in the Alps. But I've been to a museum and seen a 5,000-year-old man who was found in the ice and preserved, and that museum was in Norway. It was not in Austria. But on the other hand, there is so little to verify about Melissa's story. And again, the roots seem real. I know about French caves with caveman paintings. So my gut is I'm gonna have to go with Adria as a bluffer, because I think she's just lifting a story from Norway and putting it into Austria.
All right, that is an accusation for Adri. So Melissa, we're going to turn to you now, and we have Adri's story of the caveman being left out half open. We have Darren's story of all the goings on in the cave in Missouri. What do you think? Who's bluffing?
Yeah, so my gut feeling is all the name dropping in Darren's story made me feel like he dropped the ball there. And there was not more than just Samuel Clemens was doing the writing here. So I suspect that Darren is the bluff.
Well, all right. Adam, you know what that means? That means we have one accusation for Melissa, one accusation for Adrian, one accusation for Darren. I have not seen any comments yet coming in from audience members. Feel free if you're
audience
live or watching
is
live.
quiet.
Yes, feel free to drop comments in and let us know who you think. And just because we have a 1-1-1 tie, I'm going to make an accusation myself and break the tie and see how wrong I am. Because I don't know, as we saw, we know. So we have Adri with the Encino Man. We have Darren with the Jesse James and Samuel Clemens story. Then we have Horse Painter and Bull Painter. Wow. There's some great elements to all three of these stories. But for me, I'm going to go with Adri only because she mentioned shoes and then up and down. And she said they could prove that he was running away from someone. And I was thinking to myself, maybe he was just, kind of a wise guy. He was doing the elevator thing. So just in the name of comedy, I'm going to choose that one. So let's find out. Adam, take it away. You know who it is.
Let's do it. Chris, I'm going to have you step off of our virtual stage and get the perpetrators lined up. We're going to reveal now, was your bluff tonight for this episode, was it Adri? Was your bluff Darren? Or was your bluff Melissa? Prepare to find out. The bluff for episode Cave this whole time was Melissa. Well done, Melissa. You played a good game, but you didn't get away scot-free. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. According to my records, Adri has made the accusation.
Adri did the accusation, correct, yes.
Adri wins the game.
Adri wins. All right. So those are fascinating. That's really wild about McDowell's Cave. And Adri, I did not, I thought you were bluffing because of the elements that you talked about that were done with the medical examiner's exam of the body. Wow. Any comments, any closing comments from everyone before we sign off?
They also found food in my guy's stomach. They could tell what his last meal was. Yeah.
Oh wow, what did he eat? Mammoth?
It was like goat, and they think that he was like a shepherder who got into a fight with somebody, and then that was basically the end of his life. He sat down to eat, and they attacked him, and then he died. And before his food was digested, he died, and then he was preserved.
At least he died on a full stomach. That's how I want to go.
There's no better way.
Last meal.
That makes sense. That was before they had McDowell's in France.
There you go.
Hey, I have a question about Darren's story real quick. Did Mark Twain ever write? What stories included these caves that Mark Twain wrote?
Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. All these things about him going in with Injun Joe or Becky into the cave. Based on his adventures in McDougal Cave.
Oh, very cool.
Wow.
Nice. Now we know where the source is.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you can visit. It's a tourist attraction.
I might do that.
And you can see my guy. He's in a museum somewhere in Europe.
Oh, all right.
But not horse guy or bull guy.
Not horse guy or bull guy.
To be fair, you can visit the caves. There are paintings, but these painters are completely made up. We don't really know for sure who painted what or what their rivalry was.
That's great.
Obviously.
Well, I found it interesting that she said it was degraded due to air circulation. I'm like, that was somewhat plausible to me, only because I've been degraded by comments from people, so I can relate.
Oh my goodness. Well, my comments are positive. You've been a great host, my friend Chris.
Well, thank you, sir. Let's take it away, Adam. I'm going to turn the show back over to you and take us into next week.
You got it. You can find us always here every week. You can tune us in. You can find us on Twitch. You can find us on YouTube. And, of course, wherever you listen to your podcasts, you'll hear every episode on there. We're here every week. We'll see you next time.